Look, I'm going to be very honest. The 4 points that I go over in this video aren't going to be revolutionary and they aren't going to be exciting, but what they are going to be is effective. If I had to start over in Valorant and I had a video like this to follow, I would have reached Immortal 3 in probably 4 months or less, instead of the full year it took me to reach it in my original climb. So without further ado, let's get straight into point 1. Main 1 or 2 agents, max. You see, the human brain can only focus on a few things at a time. In Valorant, there are a ton of variables from enemy abilities, economy, your teammates' positioning, and by only playing 1 or 2 agents, it means that you give yourself one less thing that you have to pay conscious attention to. Your abilities become second nature to you since you use them every game for hundreds of games in a row. You don't have to spend time learning new abilities, new lineups, or learning the nuances of a new role. I'd recommend playing just 1 agent, but if you need a second because your agent isn't good on certain maps or you just get bored easily, then 2 is fine. As far as what agents to play, it can be literally anything. Just play what you find fun. If you find the agent fun, you're going to stick with it, and that's the most important part. Play the agent over and over again for hundreds of games until you're familiar with their abilities and the role that they play within a team comp. If you do end up playing a second agent, make sure it's in the same role as your main. This ties into our initial point of reducing the amount of things that we focus on. Raze and Jett have a lot more in common with each other and have a lot more transferable skills and gameplay patterns than Jett and Astra, for example. So make sure the agents you play are in the same role. And yes, I'm telling you to insta-lock. It's better for your growth as a player to play the same agent over and over again, and it's better for your team to have you on an agent that you're comfortable with. The only exception is if you absolutely have to fill smokes, since Valorant is really hard to play without them. But even then, I'd recommend dodging instead. That's how serious I am about limiting your agent pool, and how much I believe it would have helped me get to Immortal 3 faster, and how much it will help you achieve your goal faster. So point 1 is about limiting your agent pool so that you don't have to learn how to play multiple agents. This allows you to focus on more important fundamentals of the game. Point 2 covers one of those key fundamentals. Focus on mechanics and getting better at killing people. The number one thing separating high elo players and low elo players is mechanics and how they handle gunfights. What I've seen is that a lot of people who seek out informational videos like this one have a fantasy in their head where if they're just a big brain player who shot calls, then they can reach high elo without having mechanics. This is not true and it is a fantasy. You don't have to be tens, but Valorant is a tactical shooter. Tactics is only half of the equation, the other half is shooting. If you can't shoot as well as the other players you're against, you aren't going to win games. I'd break this into 4 smaller points. Aim, crosshair placement, peeking, and decision making. Aim is actually the least important point on here, since Valorant hitboxes are quite big and movement is slow. You don't need insane aim, but you need aim that's good enough. If you're new to FPS games, or you know that your aim is holding you back, spend a lot of time on aim trainers. It will 100% improve your aim faster than just playing deathmatch or comp games. However, if you think your aim's good enough for your rank and not the thing holding you back, aim training is probably not a good use of your time, because you could be using that time to improve other aspects of your game. Crosshair placement and peeking go hand in hand. Good crosshair placement means having your crosshair aimed at where their head will be when either you or they peek. This reduces the amount of raw aim needed to secure kills, and having good crosshair placement is the reason why you can get away with having mediocre aim in Valorant. Peeking is a bit more complex, but to summarise what good peeking means, you want to peek in a way that makes it hard for their enemies to hit you. This is done by moving at full speed, by peeking with only A&D, and by making yourself as small a target as possible by standing far away from the angle that you're peeking. Like I said, peeking is complex and this is not a peeking guide. If you want to learn more, I'm going to make a video on it in the future, but you can also watch guides from other YouTubers. Learning how to peek will greatly increase the amount of gunfights that you win. The last point is decision making, and I mean this in a micro sense. I'll just list off a few of the things that you have to consider when you're about to take a gunfight or already in a gunfight. What peek am I going to use? What abilities do we both have? Am I going to tap, burst, or spray? What range is my gun good at? If I die here, will my teammate trade me? I could keep going on and on. The point is, there are hundreds of little things that you need to consider every time you take a fight. The only way to improve this skill and to have better decision making is through experience in deathmatch and comp games, and through studying by watching tip videos like this or watching pro player VODs. Speaking of studying, that brings us into point 3 of this video. Watch more tip videos and watch more pro player VODs. There's a saying which goes, wise men learn from their mistakes, but wiser men learn from the mistakes of others. The truth is that you don't have to play thousands of games and learn from every mistake you've ever made to get good at Valorant. The game's been out for years. People have failed and figured out solutions to problems before you, and they put what they learn into videos like this one. Not everything can be learned from videos, however a lot of things can. Your mechanics won't automatically improve by watching a video, you still need to put the work in, but things like learning lineups, different types of peaks, and setups on agents like Cypher and Killjoy can have an immediate effect on your gameplay. The proper way to improve with this point is by learning something new and then immediately putting it into action in your competitive games. Knowledge is useless if you don't apply it, and if you don't apply it, you'll quickly forget it. But guides aren't the only way to learn new things in Valorant. You can also watch pro players, and this is something I did a lot when I first started learning the game. Specifically, I watched the 10-minute highlight videos from players like Tens, Tariq and Sinatra. I'd watch how they move, shoot, peek, and then try and replicate it in my own games. Eventually, I developed my own style, but I often still watch VODs from people like Demon1 and Less, as it shows me there's a different level of mechanics I can reach, and it keeps me pushing for more. So moving on to point 4, which is probably the most important point in this entire video, is to implement the play to improve mentality. This is the mentality that took me to Immortal 3, and it's what I mean when I say playing to improve. It's very simple but very effective, and if you apply it, you're going to start winning way more games. So the play to improve mentality is this. Try your best to win every single round whilst analysing each death. We focus on winning each round so that we win as many games as possible, meaning we get a higher rank and play against better players. Then we analyse each death so that we're aware of the mistakes that we're making in our games and can come up with a plan to fix them. So you die around 15 times each game, and usually there's a mistake involved. This gives us more than enough data points for us to analyse. It's easy and natural for us to go on autopilot and play the game without really thinking, but if you keep this mentality in mind throughout all your games, I think it is genuinely impossible to not climb and improve at the same time. You can analyse your deaths in real time by just thinking about how they happened, but something I like to do is to shadow play my deaths, and I'll either look back at them when the game's finished, or sometimes I'll even look at the clips whilst I'm spectating my team. Some mistakes that you pick up on might be very obvious and easy to fix just by identifying the problem and simply not making that mistake again. However, there's going to be some times where you're not 100% sure why you died or about the mistake that led to the death. In this case, I think it's good to ask someone better than you, like a coach or a friend, about the mistake you made, since if they're at a high enough elo or have good game knowledge, they might be able to identify the problem and give you a solution. Your other option is to watch YouTube videos on what you think the problem might be, and even if that doesn't directly solve the problem that you're having, you will likely still learn something, so the time spent won't be wasted. My main point here is don't let yourself make the same mistakes over and over again. Make conscious efforts to fix the mistakes that you identify, and over time, your skill level will improve massively.